Hey guys, welcome back to the Paladins Alliance. I've been really enjoying the reception of the latest new shows that I've done with NA, Not Acceptable, and as well as Rescope. Uh, those have been really doing well, and I'm happy that they are, and I'm happy that you guys are enjoying it. If you guys have any feedback, you can always leave it in the comments on this video in particular. I like to keep these little Patreon videos as like a little bit of a check-in to those who are a little bit more dedicated and really want to follow my content a lot more. Um, Today's video is of course the July Patreon video, and I haven't been doing them quite often, and that's my fault. I've been really lazy with how I've been doing those discussions, but I'm back. I'm trying to do these a little bit more regularly and try to get as much traction as possible with this. It always helps me and supports my channel to keep doing what I'm doing as regularly as possible. And you can support yourself if you so please and you want to join in on this discussion. Patreon.com/Paladins Alliance. It would be amazing to have you on board. And we have two lovely patrons today, Blizzard and Laser Radical, that have a myriad of questions, and we're gonna go through them and try to bring them to the front of the conversation. As of right now, we have more than three from each, but we'll go back and forth, and I'll cap it at six and see how it goes. So I've actually recorded this, and this will probably go out a little bit later than when I'm recording it, just because some of these questions might fall out of relevancy quite soon. So I just want to get them answered really quick and have that out in the ether, just to have proper answers. So let's begin with Laser Radical. I think here's a question with will complexity ever improve? Who should they change? I believe that Stanislaw could be a valuable asset. Maybe they can gamble on minus instead of junior. So I think complexity can improve. I think that they have a lot of fantastic pieces from the North American scene. You have players like Grim, who has, although not been utilized properly on Liquid, is still a fantastic player with great aim on his shoulders. Floppy, a player that has to play in very difficult roles, but still does it to his very best, and he can do it very well, and could also be a very big asset to a lot of North American teams. And then from then on, like obviously you have players like Rush, sorry, not Rush. What am I saying? On complexity, that would be Fang, right? So Fang is also an incredible talent, one of the hardest workers in our scene as of right now. That is a huge boon, all things considered. Um, and then you have JT, who's been on the up and up as far as his IGLing is concerned for quite some time. So there's a lot of great pieces on paper and in theory on complexity, but the fact of the matter is the results aren't there, and they're not able to actually uh, be as effective as I was hoping for them to be. I was expecting them to be a top 20 team, all things considered, because it's basically essentially a Voltron of all the latest and greatest pieces of the up and coming players in North America, that it should have been a slam dunk. But sadly, it looks like there must have been a little too many role overlaps, a little too many discrepancies in how some of these players like to approach the game, and so much so that we're gonna have to have changes to be made. And so it says here that there have to be changes to be made. I don't think Stanislaus should ever be on a top team until proven otherwise. He's had a couple of stints with teams like B-Hop and whatnot, and he clearly hasn't shown that he has enough left in the tank to do that. And I think that he's trying to replace a player on Carpe Diem, which I think is obviously a horrible idea, just because I think that Carpe Diem has a lot of time to progress and improve, and I don't think Stanislaw is going to help elevate that process, even if they do win ECL. So I really hate that move is happening. I think that he's run its course, and he's got to find a different way to reinvent his career, and ruining potential ECL teams or fringe top North American teams. I don't think he is royalty enough to just waltz into a top team anymore. So I think that JT should stay. I think I'm still very fine with how JT calls. That doesn't really have a problem with me. I think he has very good synergy with TC, and that staff IGL combo should stay as is. I do think that Junior should change, and they have made that change. Obviously, bringing in Halzerk instead of minus, as this question has been posed to me. But I think that Halzark is a pretty good option in as terms as in terms of the economics of the whole deal, because he is a free agent with the Dignitas releasing of all the players, and he's a pretty admirably good player, all things considered. He's had a not necessarily insane amount of form that I'd be like, oh, he is at the top of my list and I'd want to sign him immediately. I think one that the community has been trying to bring forward for quite some time was Montu. Quite some time in the sense, like maybe like ever since he got released from OG, but that probably has a pretty penny, and I'm assuming OG has probably locked him down for a lot of money, and that might have been a difficult decision to make. Um, but yeah, I think Halzerk is actually a pretty good pickup, all things considered. They need a little bit more aggression, um, and perhaps and I think a little bit more measured aggression. There is a little too much on the board, but people that have a little bit more reason to just hit the easy shots, I think that is a big issue for what Junior brought to the table. He was kind of struggling to hit those easy shots, and has to kind of reinvent himself as well. I hope that he kind of recuperates, because he was always a great talent on the original Bad News Bears roster, and I hope that he finds himself once more. So overall, I've always been very high on the individuals of Complexity, and I wish them nothing but the best, because these guys deserve much better than the results that they're actually getting. And hopefully, Haslock will be the change in their actual motivation and confidence, because at this point, it's like if they actually have something uh, like a rejuvenation of some sort with bringing in a new player like Halzer, perhaps that could be the thing that reinvents them and relights that fire to all these players, because they're very capable of winning. It just we need something to get the ball rolling, and perhaps that this move will actually be that catalyst, or should I say? So we'll go on to the next question. Blizzard here writes in with which team's momentum will be most affected by the player break. So I was thinking about this for quite some time. I usually try to mull about these questions for a little bit before I actually try to come up with an answer, because I don't want to just like waffle around here. But honestly, I had two answers. One a little bit more safe, and then the other a little bit more out there. So when you go to the actual world ranking, like I look at the top 10, and some of the obvious answers would have to be like Movistar Riders. Like they'll probably meet their match at whatever tournament that they attend next. I believe EPL is their next outing. That'll probably be one of the cases. Maus as well. So basically, a lot of the Maus and Astralis, I think all of those Fool's Gold contenders at Cologne will probably fall away. They kind of had just more of an extremity performance, all things considered, and I don't think that they're going to be able to replicate that kind of form again. They don't really have the pieces to say that they have like longevity. I think Mopaz severely overperformed on this team, that it might come back to bite them when they don't really have a game plan and they can kind of get found out. Maus as well. It's fairly formulaic. Counter Strike, Astralis as well. A lot of it had to come down to Zipnix's sort of renaissance, but I don't think that's really replicable. So those are the obvious ones. So if we have to actually start digging in a little deeper, I think another obvious one would probably be Ents, just because they're probably going to lose Spinks. We'll touch upon it on another question that I have here. But losing a top 5 player like that is going to be a huge blow. And whoever they potentially bring, it's going to have to be a bit of a rebuilding phase. And whatever kind of momentum that they had, even though they had some poor results to the tail end of their season, I think it's still going to be a really brutal come up for them to actually find that footing again. I think their ranking is probably going to dip, and it's going to be a real test for Snappy to see whether or not he's got longevity on this organization and this core, and whether or not he's got more fuel in the tank to make sure that this team is still kicking. And the final one is going to be one of those shot in the dark ones. I'm going to go with Navi, and I'm going to say that Electronic is going to probably meet his honeymoon phase, and people are going to really have to start to discuss whether or not SDY is probably the best man for the job. And having a long tournament like EPL, I'm not really counting blast groups, by the way, because I think that is a formula, or sorry, a tournament format that doesn't necessarily lend itself to getting proper answers to the strength of a team, because as we've seen before, there have been a lot of fluke situations with OG in the spring season, just cruising through flawlessly with a lot of BO1 wins and I think only one BO3 win. So I don't really constitute that as a first proper event, EPL being the main one, and I think that's where they'll kind of meet their match and really try to see whether or not they kind of deserve that number two spot. It's again a shot in the dark. It's probably not going to be correct. Navi will probably still cruise. They probably still have a lot of protocols in place, but if anything, I think the cracks will show for SDY, and that is the one thing that I'm kind of worried about, but excited to see if there is actually legs to it, and if we can see a bounce back for Navi long term and see that rivalry between FaZe and Navi actually start to blossom a little bit more, because it could be one of the best that Counter-Strike's ever seen. We never had a real, true Counter-Strike rivalry beyond a couple outliers in Fnatic Nip. And Astralis Liquid is kind of like fool's gold again, with some real streaky performances from either side. But this could be really one for the ages, and as we've seen with the Cologne best of five, it could be a real sight for the eyes, so to speak. So I hope that I'm wrong on that one, but if I had to give a shot in the dark, I would say Navi. Okay, let's keep going. Another from Laser Radical. Because some of these are kind of outdated because it's like about who should they replace them with, and such. But I'll probably tackle these questions more so as like what the move is happening and how I would like perceive those moves to be. Um, Vitality want to replace Masuta. Will he be able to get Spinks? If not, who will they acquire instead? And if they do, what will happen next? So first of all, I've talked about this on multiple shows that I'm kind of out on the Vitality project and what they're trying to do. I don't think that this Apex Zonic duo ever had any real synergy beyond like being chums outside of the server. I think that trying to mesh these types of play styles is always going to be really difficult, and just fundamentally, I don't think that this roster will ever work unless some huge turn of events happens and Apex and Zywoo really step up the way their communication comes through, and Zonic kind of gives leeway to Apex's calling. I think there's still that real heavy clash that it's really tough to just integrate another player. I think Masuta was always having a lot of trouble. He's a much more supportive player on the team, that ramp player on Nuke, and that's kind of like the position that I think about when I think of a bit more of a supportive player. And the issue is that he always would have the most trouble in communication and probably was the most odd one out, all things considered, even statistically. So it makes sense that he was actually the man to get booted off the team. Now, bringing in Spinks, I'm not really sure that it's the right move, just because it's, again, another culture that's being brought in. It's another idea being brought in, and I don't think that that is the main thing that Vitality needs in their team right now, in team chemistry senses. I will say it does bring a sense of like a person that already knows English, so they don't have to really worry about that. So he might be a lot of an anchor in some senses, but again, role overlap will be a question. How are they going to tackle that? Are they going to try to shove him into Masuta's positions, or are they going to try to switch things around? Because I know Magisk and Dupree will probably want to have their certain kind of roles set in place, and try to move through with that, especially with Zonic on the team. So I'm hoping that they actually properly give him the resources. On the end side of things, as I spoke about before, it's going to be a real uphill battle for ENCE, trying to find not only a person to potentially fill the void that Spinks will bring in, but also maintain the level of firepower and consistency that they had, largely brought by Spinks' firepower. There are a lot of situations where they're kind of down and out tactically, but Spinks would kind of dig them out of that rut, and not having that player is going to be really difficult. It's going to be really difficult, especially with Hades' form being brought into question as well. Maybe he's brought into the chopping block as well. So there's a lot of little question marks here for ENCE that I'm really worried that they're not going to be able to sustain, sadly, because I really wanted them to win a complete trophy, but it's a tough road ahead, and I don't think that they're going to be able to amount to it. So I think, honestly, all things considered, I think this is a negative for all teams involved. And I think this is going to be one that people regret, and perhaps I might have to eat my words on that one, and Spinks will just propel Vitality to be a championship contending team on the off chance. But I think this move isn't a good one, and I think this is a waste of money, and I think that this is going to be one for the history books in the poorer sense. So let's keep going. Let's move on. which team in EPL 16 from the conference has the highest chance of punching above their weight? So I did actually attend this event. I was on the desk and watched as much as I possibly could from this event. And we have a couple teams that actually made it through. I believe it was six different teams, or sorry, five, or no, six. Yeah, six. Outsiders, Heat, MIBR, Eternal Fire, Endpoint, and FTW. FTW being obviously the huge outlier in the situation. It was a good run to make it here, but I don't think that they're going to really do much. Endpoint as well. I think they had a bit of a honeymoon phase with Kiarby on the team. I'd love to be proven wrong. I know my boys, Neo, Allen, and folks would love to have them proven otherwise, but I don't think they'll be able to do it either. Eternal Fire, I think they're a lot of fool's gold on that team. I liked the introduction of Major to bring a proper IGL, but I think the Paz move was a really bad one. I don't like that X-Cloud is not on this team anymore. And I think they're going to really struggle. They're going to have some real problems here at EPL, and I think they're not going to be able to stomach it. MIBR also potentially losing Cello going to Imperial. You've essentially lost your IGL and you're losing one of your star players. Again, huge problems for Bit and Co. on that team, and I don't think that they're going to be able to bounce back either. They were already having real troubles trying to IGL with, frankly, a player that doesn't IGL normally. So I think that MIBR is also going to have trouble. Saying outsiders is probably a stupid idea because yeah, they probably will punch above their weight in some ways, but I don't want to say that's a cop-out answer. I think the logical answer is probably going to be Heat. It's a team that's been around for quite some time. Let me actually get you the proper time. Yeah, okay, so 6 months on Heat alone, but I'm trying to see how long they were on Double Pony together. Yeah, like almost a whole year on Double Pony, and there has been zero changes to this team, and they've still consistently stayed in the top 30. They've still they've gone through multiple iterations of their map pool. They've reinvented themselves, the identity of some of these players. Body has slowly started to come into his own as an IGL, and I think that this team is easily going to be able to go toe to toe with some of these fringe teams that you would think that would perform better. They will seriously start to ruffle some feathers, and I think that they could be one of those fringe teams that make it third out in their group and make a strong case in one of their playoff matches as well. Get a lot of Pro Tour points from this and start to have that ball rolling after some questionable ESL Challenger appearances, which I think will always be a tough tournament to really judge the caliber of a team, because it is such a short tournament and it is a very volatile format as well, with those BO1s initially and only a BO3 to stay within contention in those tournaments. So I think that Heat will probably be the one team out of all of these guys to punch above their weight. I think they could be a playoff team depending on what group they actually get. And I think upsets will definitely be on their horizon with how deep their map pool is. So look out for Heat at EPL main stage. I've been really happy with what I saw from them, especially with the kind of grit and tenacity that they had in that stage alone after getting knocked down to the lower bracket by Endpoint. And we'll settle in on Laser Radical's final question here. Again, a lot of these are roster move stuff, so I'll try to find one that I particularly like to talk about. I'm not going to talk about the G2 stuff because I'll cover it in the next NA episode. Honestly, all of these will probably be talked about in the NA episode. Yekandar as well. We've kind of talked about that a lot. So we'll go with the Boomich question. If with Boomich out of Navi, do you think they can reach the same or higher scaling with SDY? And I think a lot of this hinges on the longevity of SDY and his role on the team and whether or not it actually makes sense, right? Because right now it feels a lot of like he's kind of getting the necessary kill here or there to kind of keep Navi in the rounds, keep them in 4v4s and 3v3s so that Navi's heavy hitters can get them through the round. And the other thing is also is like how much is in the longevity of Electronic as an IGL, right? So he's had basically 2 or 3 stints as of right now, and obviously his fragging has gone up in some situations, even though he's playing a lot more selflessly in some ways. And it's got to be down to whether or not that actually can come to fruition and whether or not he actually has got longevity and legs to that role. Because so far it looks amazing, right? but we all know that there are pitfalls to being an IGL, and there are going to be drops in form, and whether or not Navi can kind of fight through that and have other avenues of opening kills and whatnot uh, is going to be a real question, because I think that, yeah, I mean, as of right now, if I had to take it at face value, definitely they have the potential to punch above their weight and uh, break through the ceiling that Boomich created with the old lineup, and perhaps that they can try to combat against FaZe properly, because they definitely look like that best of five. There was a world where they win Cologne, right? So I think that Navi definitely has the potential to go past Boomich. Now, whether or not they'll actually commit to that, it's like now is the season where we'll really get to get that answer, and I think that's one of the most exciting parts of the end of 2022 is whether or not they'll be able to replicate that kind of form, and if they really are a contender, because if they are and they're really just smashing through these brackets, then it's going to be very very exciting. Because frankly, I think that the way that they're manhandling their way through some of these brackets, it looks more impressive than the one that they did when they went through Stockholm, just because of the nature of that scene at that point. So I'm really excited for this kind of iteration of Navi, and that kind of will they won't they is what's most exciting to me, because there is that real tightrope kind of situation going on. And then a bit of a more different question here from Blizzard. What is your idea of the perfect show match? This is the one. This is the only. This question is the question that made me not want to record this video for quite some time, because I was just thinking about it for a long time. Because there's been a lot of good kind of show matches, all things considered, across time. We've had the kind of fight of new versus old a couple of times, between like NIP new, NIP old, which have been kind of lackluster, all things considered. Those have been lame. I think Navi did those as well. We did just a bunch of other ones. Like I think the Battle of Betway was one of them, where it was just like random maps across like time, and it was just like already tenured teams. You had the Gamers Without Borders that did a different format in how the game was played. All novel ideas, but I don't think any of them really were that fun to me. To me, it didn't feel as much of an entertainment product as I thought. And I think the one that drew me in the most, it's not really a show match, but it was in some senses, but it was the Clash for Cash that VP and Astralis did after the Atlanta Major. And it was for actual money, and VP actually were terrible in that final, because that was when Astralis was just much stronger in confidence, and it was basically just free money for Astralis. But I like that concept of like kind of like a grudge match, like fight night type thing with like a pay per view esque element to it. Like I mean, like obviously you should watch it for free on Twitch, but it felt very like boxing esque, like this the grudge match rematch and whatnot. And I liked how it was framed, and I liked that kind of entertainment style. And maybe you can probably like make that same prize pool, but you like put it towards like charity or something, or something of the sort. But I would love to see something like that with like previous major finals, and try to integrate like newer maps or like older maps. I like that concept in some senses, or put them down to like a map randomizer and just like see how much of the skill comes down to map preparation, and or more so just team chemistry. Like it would really test that boundary. There's a lot of ways you could go about it, but I really like the one thing that I'm pretty set upon in like my perfect show match should probably be doing like a fight night grudge match esque, like just it's just one game, and maybe you have some undercards of like some crazy big like major semis or something, and try to replicate that. Like it would be so cool that like you could, I mean, a great example would just be the one that we did in Antwerp recently. It would be like a rematch of FaZe Spirit, because that was a really close best of three. And then obviously the FaZe Navi rematch should be awesome to watch as well. So there are a lot of ways you could go about it, and I think those are probably my bits and bobs of criteria that I would say, all things considered. So that's gonna do it. I've reached my six question quota here, and I had a lot of fun. I mean, I just love talking about stuff like this for ages. I will literally do this forever and ever. I definitely want to keep doing more of this. So I will have the next discussion board up and running in about a week or so, And so if you guys want to join in on the action and support the channel, again, patreon.com/Paladins Alliance. This is going to be a very like editless video. I'm just putting this straight up out because I just wanted to keep it a discussion and keep it just very casual with you guys, not as formatted as my other videos. And I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of content again. And if you have any feedback of the stuff that I've done recently with the NA video, or this video in fact, or even Rescope, let me know down in the comments. I'd love to know what you guys think of this and whether or not you like the orientation this channel is going. And I'm trying to integrate a lot of different styles. And whether or not you like that, I'd really like to know. You guys are my community, and I can't thank you enough for the amount of support that you've been giving to the channel. Reaching 1K subscribers in a year of just a no-name channel is kind of insane, all things considered, and I cannot thank you guys enough. So I will catch you guys in the next one. I'll probably be the next NA video, or maybe even some other projects down in the pipeline. There's a lot of stuff that I have cooking and a lot of ideas that I have gestating that I'm just trying to put pen to paper, and you'll see the fruits of my labor soon enough. And I can't wait to see you guys be a part of it, and let me know what you guys think. So I'll talk to you guys later. See you in the next video. Peace.